we had a series of sessions earlier where we discussed about the abduction of Sita and what caused the abduction and how different characters responded to it. So now, for many people, these kind of incidents often remind them about something which can be very, very much of a immediate threat and pain. Say, if somebody is abused, somebody is violated, somebody is killed, there's something ghastly incidents of, say, violence against women in India. So now, when that happens, how should we see that? Is it something because of past karma? Is it that person was just going around their life normally and something terrible happens to them? So, how do we actually see such situations? And what does philosophy, can philosophy help us? Should we even look at philosophy for such purposes? So, there is, when we use philosophy, there are broadly two ways in which people may use philosophy. It is in a way that is for serving others. I want to be of some help to you. The other could be in a self-serving way. Self-serving means that there can be self-serving in many different ways. It could be that I have my belief and I want to ensure that my belief is not questioned. My belief remains true. Somebody could use philosophy in a self-serving way, wherein in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is described that after Kamsa brutally kills 6 of the children of Vasudeva and Devaki, and then the 7th apparently is a miscarriage, and the 8th turns out to be the goddess Durga. So he has a change of heart because he is a worshipper of Durga. He says Durga has appeared through Devaki. Devaki must be a very special lady. And then he apologizes to her. He says, first he says, I am such a cruel, hard-hearted, terrible person. I killed these babies, I killed my own nephews. Please forgive me. And then he says, you should know, ultimately everything happens by destiny. That actually your children were destined to be killed. So now, is such a reasoning valid? Can we say that, when he killed someone, he was the person who did it? So, to say that it is destiny. So, that just seems to be wrong. There seems to be something off over here. If we have a relative and we admit our relative to a hospital and the doctor makes a mistake and the relative passes away. And the doctor says ultimately, this is their destiny. This is meant to happen. So, is it destiny or is it that person's irresponsibility? So, these are when we consider philosophy, the purpose of philosophy is to give us additional resources for facing life's challenges. It should not be it should not be that we have to give up our intelligence or give up our normal sense of how we deal with issues. So let's look at 2 key incidents and how there are different approaches. So in the storyline of the Ramayana, if you consider the storyline, now there are 2 major plot twists. 2 places where the storyline changes substantially. Which are those 2? Ram being exiled and then Sita abducted. So now if you consider these 2 plot twists, in these 2 places, let's look at Lord Ram's response. In the Ramayana itself, the Valmiki Ramayana, Lord Ram is not presented primarily as God. He is presented as an ideal human being. He's a person who shows by his example how to deal with life's adversities. So, in that mood of Valmiki Ramayana, I'll just use the word Ram. I won't use the word Lord Ram every time. So when, let's look at how the responses are different. When Ram is exiled, what happens is, this is the broad theme of, if you consider Ram's action, there is acceptance. Okay, this has happened, let's accept it. On the other hand, when Sita is abducted, absolutely no acceptance. Rather, you could say there is the acceptance of the responsibility to correct it. The acceptance of the responsibility to correct it. So now, if we say that, okay, say Ram being exiled, that was destiny. And that's why Ram accepted it. But then Sita being abducted could also be called as destiny. Why not accept that also? So the key point is that whenever we are trying to understand the cause of something, and then we are trying to address the cause. So generally speaking, it is that whenever we are trying to understand the cause, the principle given in Nyaya is the Vedic system of logic, is that we move from the Drushya to the Adrushya. We move from the visible cause, which is often the immediate cause. And when the immediate cause doesn't make sense, when the immediate cause does not give us an explanation, then we can move towards the invisible causes. Now when we move towards the invisible causes, within the invisible also there could be a range of causes. There could be remote causes, there could be ultimate causes. So in general, we start with immediate causes. So, for example, in the Ramayana, when, say, Hanuman is going across the ocean, and when he's going across the ocean, at that time, suddenly, he's just not moving. He is seeming to move, but he's not moving at all. Then, what does he do? He looks around, he says, hey, there's a demon from below jeering at him. And he realizes she has some mystic powers, and she has caught me by that. So normally, if we are moving, we should be moving forward. We are not moving forward if I am walking, and if I am not moving ahead. If you are driving a car, and the car is moving, but apparently we are not moving ahead. What is going on? You look for some cause, and you saw that she has got some mystic powers by which this is happening. She stopped me. So when the Vanaras are searching for Sita, and they are deep in the wilderness, they can't find any water to drink in. It's such a deserted land. Then what do? Okay, we are thirsty. Let us find some water. Let us search. If they thirst, the immediate causes, let's address the immediate cause. I mean, one says that is common sense. Say if somebody, say, on a cold night, eats a dozen ice creams, and they eat and eat and eat and eat, and the next morning when they wake up, the previous night they are saying, ice cream, I want ice cream, and next morning, ice cream! They start feeling great pain in their throat. They have got a sore throat, they have a terrible throat. So now, is that terrible throat because of their past karma? Well, yes, but it is past night's karma. Not past life's karma, isn't it? So generally, whenever we want to seek an explanation, start with the immediate explanations. And we look at the immediate explanation, and if we can address the immediate explanation, then we need to do that. And when the immediate explanation does not make sense, then we go towards a more distant explanation. So, now in the case of Kaikeyi and her whole conspiracy to have Ram exiled. So at that time, when Lakshman comes to know about it, Lakshman is enraged. And he says, so when we are angry, our normal tendency is to find some target for our anger. So now for him, obviously, it is the king. So he says, the king, you are virtuous, you are righteous, you have never done any wrong. And exile is actually a terrible punishment. It's in the traditional hierarchy of punishments, exile is just one below execution. You lose your life, that is execution. You lose everything except your life. That is exile. Nowadays it's very difficult to exile anyone because there are hardly any forests to exile people. But probably the nearest we might get to is deportation. If somebody is deported from a country. But if somebody is an Indian living as an immigrant in some other country, if they are deported, at least they have a home to go back to. Maybe they have some savings also, they have some relatives. But exile is worse. They just have to go to a forest and there's nothing over there. So he says he has done nothing wrong. How can the king allow this? How can the king do this? He says, the king is infatuated by lust for his youngest wife. And that's why he has become blinded. Ram has to come and says, I was there with my father and with Preeti. I saw that there was no infatuation. That Dasharatha Maharaj, my father didn't want to do this. It was out of obligation because he had given this vow. How is it that we have never heard of this vow? Very conveniently, when you need to be exiled, an old vow just resurfaces. So Ram said, are you saying that you know everything about our parents? Are you saying that they're lying? So he had given this word to Kaikeyi. Now because his anger, the anger has to go somewhere. So the anger shifts from Ram, from Dashrath to Kaikeyi. And he says that, oh, you always respected and loved her like a mother. How could she do this to you? Ram says, don't speak harshly about her. Her love for me was so great. It was like the flow of the Ganga, incessantly flowing. Ram's attempt to calm him is just not working. Lakshman, see, anger makes different people work in different ways. Some people, when they get angry, just can't speak at all. Just get so angry that they become speechless. Some people, when they become angry, they speak but they become incoherent. They don't know what they are speaking. Some people, however, when they become angry, that anger activates their intelligence. But that intelligence is activated to just justify their view. When I was growing up, I had a bit of a short temper. And since my childhood, I was very much interested in language. So I was very good at words. And soon I realized a bad temper and a good vocabulary is a deadly combination. Just be so sarcastic and cutting that what we speak, people will remember for the rest of their life. It just becomes a permanent scar in their memories. So it's a dangerous thing. So Lakshman turns the same argument around. He says, that's what I can't understand. He says, if her love was like the Ganga, how did the Ganga dry up in one night? That's why Ram says. That's why when I saw her change behavior, I understood. This must be the will of destiny. This must be the will of destiny. So basically, when the immediate explanation just doesn't make sense. We have a very nice relationship with someone, and suddenly that person is turning against us. So you see, when the immediate explanation doesn't make sense, then we go towards a more remote explanation. This must be the will of destiny. Now, Lakshman is still not done. He says, only cowards accept injustice in the name of destiny. Heroes fight against injustice. You should fight against the king, and I will help you. Ram says, my concern is not destiny. It is duty. It is duty. As a duty to my father, I was ready to ascend the throne. And as a duty to my father, now I will go to the forest. So, here there's an interesting, very significant difference. So when there is some adversity, at that time, why it happened. So to make sense of that, Lord Ram is using destiny. But what to do? For that, he is not focusing on destiny. He is focusing on duty. There's a difference between how we make sense of things, but okay, after we make sense of things, what do we do in that situation? So destiny can be the explanation for why something happened. But destiny does not determine how we should respond in that situation. That is determined by our duty. So now, generally speaking, when this concept of destiny comes up, there are different ways in which it can be understood. I'll talk about 3 broad ways in which the word destiny is used. So one is that it is our past karma reservoir. It's our past karma bank. So that means when we start our life journey, above us is our destiny. We bring our destiny with us, and from this destiny, some positive, something negative will keep unfolding in our life. So destiny is our past karma bank, from which different things are going to happen. So, say for example, when we are born, a significant part of destiny comes upon us. And the family in which you are born, the complexion with which you are born, the IQ level with which you are born, all this is determined by destiny. So destiny refers to the past karma bank. So destiny is not determined by God directly. It is determined by our own past karma. That's one meaning of destiny. Now, the other meaning of destiny is that which is expected to happen. So, for example, if some small child is there, and the child has extraordinary talent, some child is very good at maths, or say there is some young cricketing talent, brilliant batsman, brilliant bowler, and at that time you say, oh, he's destined for greatness, she's destined for greatness. So, when we use the word destined, here what we use it in the sense, we use it in the sense of there is a potential for it. So that means this person has some talents, and those talents are gifts which are capable of taking that person to greatness. Now, this is slightly different, and we'll look at the differences soon. But so the first and the second are related, but the emphasis is different. You are destined for greatness. So sometimes people will go to astrologers and take some predictions. The astrologer may say that something like that. This person is going to be good at these things or whatever. But it will be visible talents also. We don't have to go into astrology at all. But now the third is that which was meant to happen. So this conveys not potential but inevitability. ये तो होना ही था. So this we use the word destiny in this third term also. This was meant to happen. Sometimes you may in English some things are just meant to be. So now when we use it in this sense, the idea is that even if you try to avoid something, you cannot avoid it. It's going to happen. So each of these have slightly different implications. The key point over here is that when we are going through life, if I am going through my life, there are some things which are controllable for us. And there is a huge level of things which are uncontrollable. So, now whatever is uncontrollable, that is sometimes generically referred to as destiny. So for example, suppose a team is in cricket, a team is about to win a match. But if the rains come and the match gets wiped out, and we may say, oh, this was destiny. Here what we are saying is, it's meant to, okay, it is just meant to sort of convey a sense of acceptance. And this has happened, what can you do about it? So, जो भी हो गया क्या कर सकते हैं? So basically in life, there are some things which are controllable for us and there are many things which are not controllable for us. So the way, if you consider the way the Lord Ram, is when we can't make sense of something, then we can say that this, the cause of this is destiny. So now afterwards, we'll revisit this incident a little bit later. But fundamentally, when Sita is abducted, at that time, what do? They say, oh, this is destiny, let me accept it. No. See, this has happened, now we have to correct it. We have to get Sita back, no matter what it is. They're ready to do a lot of things. First of all, find out where she is, then form alliances. Like sometimes in a movie story, there is a side plot. Like you want to go in one direction, but there is like another adventure which has to be done before they get to that main spot. So like that for Ram, there is a whole side plot of dealing with Wali, that Sugriv gets the kingdom so that he gets the resources, and then when he gets the resources, then Sita can be found. And first Sita's location can be found, and then she can be found afterwards. They can be reunited. But the point here is that when we are trying to understand what to do when, there is this whole sense that in our life there are things which are beyond our control. Now what do we do about the things beyond our control? Just accept that this is the way it is, do we try to change it? There is something, if I am here, there is something that happens to me and there is something I do. So now, what happens can be explained through destiny. But what I do, that has to be considered through duty. Right? Duty means, okay, what is my role in the situation? What is the right thing for me to do? What is the responsible thing for me to do in the situation? It is determined by that. So, now of course, as a part of determining the duty, what should I do? We may try to make sense of, okay, what caused this? And then how can I address this cause? So, we may want to consider that. But just because something has happened because of destiny, does not mean that we have to let it be as it is. So, for example, somebody gets a disease. Now, maybe that disease leads to certain problems for them. Say somebody, maybe their eyes, they can't see very well. And they get glasses. Now, you can say, okay, somebody is young and still their eyesight started depleting. And people say that is because of destiny. But just because it happened due to destiny, do you say, okay, for the rest of my life, I have to live with depleted eyesight? Obviously not. What we do is, I have to go on with my life, and to go on with my life, whatever resources I can get, I need to get those resources. So then we use glasses. So the idea is, now, okay, why did my eyesight decrease? Some people find out, okay, I was watching too much TV, I was watching TV from too much close distance. And then you may think as a cautionary step. Maybe I should not do this anymore. I should warn others that we should not do it so much. But the idea is that there is this complex analysis where when something has happened, one part is we try to make sense of why it has happened. But the other part is, what am I meant to do about it? So just because something is destined does not mean that we are not going to do anything about it. Lord Ram's decision was based on what is his duty, what is the responsible thing for him to do. So whenever we want to look at the cause of something, so we often look at the cause at different levels. Say for example, if I'm feeling cold right now, then I could say that I'm feeling cold because maybe the AC is right above me and the AC is too strong. So if that were the cause, then I would request, can you please lower the AC. Now, if I could take another framework, okay, why am I feeling cold? Oh, I'm feeling cold because this weather is not very suitable. I could say I'm feeling cold because I have some fever. I could say that I'm feeling cold because my body is very temperature sensitive. I could say that I'm feeling cold because there's climate change. I'm feeling cold because this world is dukhalaya. Now, say imagine some guest comes to our home and that guest says, okay, I'm feeling very cold. And you say, Prabhu, what to do? This world is dukhalaya. No, this world is a place of distress. And that would be, when you talk about philosophy, it should not be self-serving. It should be for serving others. The guest is there at our home, if they are feeling cold, now this world is a place of distress may be true. But that is not the explanation that we need to go to. See, the explanation that we need to go to is, okay, what can I do about it? This is my guest. So, we provide them some blankets, we provide a heater in their room. What can I do? So, in general, there's an intelligence, and we could say the opposite of intelligence is what? Foolishness, we could say that. But that is true. But in one sense, in many ways, inside us, the opposite of intelligence is the mind. Intelligence acts based on reason, logic. The mind acts based on emotion. So when somebody is mentally unhealthy, so essentially what happens is that when somebody is mentally unhealthy, they tend to place whatever problems they are facing in an unhelpful, in a destructive context. Say for example, if I am feeling cold, if I am feeling cold and I start saying, oh, you know what to do, this world is a place of distress, then that's not a very helpful context. Say for example, if somebody suffers from depression. Now depression can have many different specific situational causes. But essentially what happens in depression is that there is some particular issue that happens and the mind places that issue in an unhelpful context. So I was in America, I was giving a seminar on, it was like a part of a series of conferences. So I was talking about mental health and spirituality from the Vedic perspective. There are different speakers. So there was one American girl, she was speaking that how she sank into depression. And then she said, she also said how spirituality helped her afterwards. But she said she was studying in a college in America, and she was also waiting tables in her spare time to earn some money by the side. And one day she was taking some water for a customer. And while she was taking water in a glass, somehow the glass of water slipped from her hand and fell. Water spilled everywhere. Now, it's sometimes embarrassing, but it's something which can happen to all of us. It's no big deal. She said, the first thought that came in my mind when that happened was, if I can't carry a glass of water, how am I going to carry myself throughout my life? You say, what has this got to do with that? But what happens is, when a person is very insecure, when a person is mentally disturbed, what happens is, they take a small thing and they escalate it to a huge level. I have a devotee friend who is a suicide helpline respondent. So he was telling me in from California, he suddenly got a call from a girl who had committed suicide. Not that her ghost called, but that she had taken some pills and then she changed her mind. And he immediately got the first responders to reach there. And then he also came. And he asked her, what happened? Then she said that, I called my boyfriend and he didn't pick up my phone. Okay, then? No, I felt so disheartened by that. So many times we call someone, then he talked with a little bit further, and he said, what? So what were you thinking? You see, whenever people do anything, from our perspective, it may seem completely stupid. So crazy it may seem. But what we consider crazy, it's not exactly crazy. It's what happens is, see, whatever the mind tells us to do, the mind always has a reason. Even if the reason is unreasonable. The reason itself may be unreasonable, but there is a reason. So he said, okay, what were you thinking at that time? So she said, when this boy didn't respond to, when my boyfriend didn't respond to me, I started thinking that, why is he not responding to me? Maybe he's not going to respond to me. Maybe he's going to ghost me. Maybe he has left me. Maybe he's with someone else. Maybe, he just doesn't care for me. Maybe there is something wrong with me because of which no one will ever care for me. And to feel that we are unloved is terrible. But to feel that we are unlovable, that is causing not circumstantial loneliness, but that can cause existential loneliness. She started thinking that, maybe there's something unlovable about me. That's why nobody wants to be with me. And maybe 10 years down the line, all my friends will be in happy, healthy relationships, and I'll be all alone. And they will all feel sorry for me, and they will conceal their pity for me. And I don't want to be the object of pity for everyone else. So what is the point of such a life? Let me end my life. Now, if you look at this chain of thought, there is a logic. You can call it a foolish logic, you can call it a tragic logic, but there is a logic over there. So what is happening is the mind can put a particular situation in an unhelpful or unhealthy context. And when that happens, a small problem, instead of addressing it at a circumstantial level, we may escalate it to a far bigger. So the intelligence, what it does is, the intelligence places problems in the most helpful context. Most helpful means, okay, how can this situation be helped? How can we deal with the situation? Right? But the mind, what it does, it often puts it in unhelpful contexts or even harmful contexts. So when this happens, this is where problems start happening. So we all will experience loss in our lives. So I'm taking a slight diversion to the topic of destiny over here. We'll come back to destiny a little later again. But I'm talking about how our mind can cause a mess when we are trying to understand the cause of problems. And how sometimes a misunderstanding of destiny can become an additional way for the mind to mess up with our life. So we all will experience loss in our life. We may lose a job, we may be in a relationship, we may lose a relationship, we may invest money somewhere, may lose the money. So there are three ways broadly our mind could interpret it. I have lost. That's a fair objective interpretation. But the one other mind could say, I am lost. I had invested so much money, I put all my money over here. Now I just don't know what I'm going to do if all the money is gone. If I had invested 10 years in this relationship has gone, what am I going to do? I'm lost. That could also be objective, but definitely this is much more disorienting. It's much more disruptive. I am lost. I just feel purposeless, I don't know what to do. But the most damaging would be, I am a loser. If you start thinking, I am a loser, nobody wants to be with the loser. But if we are a loser, then we don't want it to be with us. So in one sense, like suicide is like a desperate attempt to break up with oneself. Somebody in a relationship, they want to end the relationship. They want to. But if we feel we are a loser, we want to break up with ourselves. How can we break up with ourselves? Suicide is that desperate attempt. I just want to break up with myself. If I am a loser, this is how the mind may interpret things in a way that is unhealthy and even harmful for us. So now when we bring this to the point of philosophy, as I said, for all of us in whatever situation we are in, we need to find out any particular situation can have many different causes. But what is the most helpful framework in which to put this? Put this particular problem. What is the most helpful framework? So, when Sita was abducted, Ram would have blamed Lakshman. Why did you leave Sita? Lakshman would have blamed Ram. Why did you go after the deer first? So they could have blamed each other. But that is not a helpful context. So now did Lakshman leaving Sita contribute to Sita's abduction? Yes, it did. Did Ram's going after the deer contribute? Yes, it did. But intelligence means when there is a problem, which is the most helpful context in which to put the problem. And once we can put it in the helpful context, then we can deal with it. So when we look at philosophy, philosophy is meant to provide us some more contexts in which we could place a problem. But that does not mean that has to be the only context in which you put it. That does not mean just because philosophy has given us some additional context. What is that additional context? Okay, things happen because of our past life karma also. But that does not mean we make it the only context in which we put it. Imagine there's a newborn baby and the newborn baby is crying. And when the baby is crying, should the mother think the baby is crying because of her past karma? If a mother starts thinking like that, a mother will become a monster. Isn't it? Whatever the reason the baby is crying, my dharma is to comfort my baby, to care for them. Now sometimes, despite our best attempts to comfort the baby may still keep crying. You may go to a doctor, and the doctor may also not be able to detect what is wrong. Or the doctor may give some medicine, but the doctor may say this is going to take some time to recover. Now that time, when the pain is there, when the baby is crying, the baby is in pain and we are in pain, at that time accepting, okay, I have done what I can, but there will be some time when we have to bear it. After we have done what we can, if still the problem remains, then accepting it as destiny is okay. But we can't just escalate things immediately to the level of destiny. So, philosophy, it is helpful, it is positive when it provides additional contexts. For us to, by context, you understand what I'm saying, this circles I talked about? Over here, multiple circles which we put. Each of this is a context. This is one context, this is one context. So these are all different contexts in which we could put the situation. So philosophy is meant to give us some additional context to place the situation in. But which context we place a situation in when? That is for us to use our intelligence based on our sense of responsibility. So, if we consider particular situations, let me take two more examples and then we will give conclusion and then we have question answers. Say, if we consider the example of, let's say, matter of Vasudeva Devaki. Now, Vasudeva, when he was married to Devaki, at that time Kamsa was driving the chariot, and suddenly this Akashvani came. And with that Akashvani, he just turned around and wanted to lop off Devaki's head. And at that time, Vasudeva uses various arguments to try to pacify Vasudeva pacify Kamsa. So now one of the arguments he uses is, if your death is destined, it is anyway going to happen. No, we all have to die sooner or later. If your death is destined, it will happen. Why do a terribly sinful activity of killing your own sister? So now it's interesting, when I read this particular sentence, Vasudeva doesn't turn that logic around and say, if Devaki is destined to die, why am I spending my time arguing with him? Why not? Because for him, protecting his wife was his duty. He was going to stick to his duty. Kamsa was giving up his duty, in fact doing the opposite of his duty. It's giving up, say there's some crime going on and the police just run away from there and is giving up duty. But there's some crime going on and the police join the criminals. That is doing the opposite. So Kamsa was meant to be a protector and he was becoming a killer. So he's doing the opposite. So he was placing that in that context. But then he saw it didn't work. And finally, what did he say? The final context in which he gave it is, okay, Devaki is not the threat for you. It is the child is the threat. So when the child is born, I will hand the child over to you. And Kamsa was satisfied. So basically, when we are trying to communicate with others, so philosophy is one resource used. But if that particular explanation doesn't work, then use some other explanation. So Buddhi, Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita chapter explained, in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter he explains, intelligence means to put things in their proper perspective. Proper perspective. Now what perspective would be proper? Well, it depends on time, place, circumstance. Which perspective is improper? Which perspective is proper? That is what we learn through our intelligence. So now there is a misunderstanding or misapplication of the Bhagavad Gita, which is common. I was recently talking with one devotee. He is a very remarkable story. He was targeted by Christian missionaries in India. Very intelligent boy. It seems Christian missionaries actually do a very diligent targeting. At one level, religion, of course, religion is meant for reaching God, but at one level, religion is basically competitive marketing. Ultimately, people want to reach God, but whoever reaches to them, that's where people may adopt. If the product is not visible, people will not get the option also for it. So Christians are very good at marketing. So he came and they started presenting arguments. He said, some part of me. I found what they were saying was that all the criticisms of Hinduism seemed so logical to me. Some part of me said, maybe I should find out. Before I change my faith, I should try to find out. And I started looking for answers. And nowhere I could get any answers. Then he was introduced to devotees. Then some devotee referred him to my website, The Spiritual Scientist. There are almost 8,000 answers are there. And then he said, I started getting answers. Then he said, I started feeling equipped. Hey, this answer is good. This answer doesn't make sense. This answer I want to find out more. I started exploring more and more. So now one of the criticisms that Christianity uses, there are many different levels of criticism. And one of them is that, this whole philosophy of past life karma, that is used to perpetuate inequality in Hindu society. That somebody is a poor person, they are poor because of their past karma. And the idea is, if you give them charity, you are interfering with their karma. If somebody is born in the lower caste, then they are born in the lower caste because of their past karma. They are meant to be in that position. If you try to elevate their position, then you are interfering with their karma. So it's that this unfairness and injustice is perpetuated by philosophy. And that's why this whole philosophy of karma, their argument is this is a satanic philosophy. It's a philosophy which has come from Satan. And you have to reject it. As long as India believes in the philosophy of karma, there is no hope for equality in India. There is no hope for the removal of poverty and prosperity coming up in India. Now, if that were the case, if this is how philosophy was meant to be applied, then just let's look at Shastra. Okay. In the Bhagavatam, there is the story of King Pruthu. Pruthu is a king, and at that time there is a famine in his kingdom. People are starving. The citizens come to him, they say, we are starving. Does he say, it's your karma because of you are starving, I am not going to interfere with the karma? That would be ridiculous. What does he say? He says that as a king, I will intervene. And he takes proactive measures, quite aggressive, quite assertive measures to remove poverty, remove the starvation. So there are examples of kings, for example, King Shibi, Maharaj Rantidev, they are ready to sacrifice their own things for taking care of others. So it is not that the philosophy is meant to make people heartless. Is there the idea of interfering in other people's karma? Well, it is in one sense that if we give charity without considering the consequences of charity, sometimes there is a whole phenomena, it's called harm causing charity. Like if you give charity, if you give money to a person who is alcoholic, they are not really going to use that money to feed them or themselves or feed their family. So many countries where there are welfare countries, there are drug addicts. The government maintains them. The government gives them money, but they use the money not to get food, they use it to get stoned. They'll starve, but they will not take drugs. So the point is, when you talk about interfering with people's karma, what it means is that our help should not be in such a way that it ends up causing harm. So that is the perspective, but it is not that Or when somebody is suffering, or it's because of their past karma let them suffer. No, it's not just in scripture, but in the tradition. There are so many temples which give free food. There are so many temples around which the charitable activities are done. So it is not, if there is that conception, that is a misconception, that is a misapplication. What karma is meant to do is not take away the immediate compassion and charity, but to give us a bigger context to understand. One more context. So now coming back to the starting question, that when some injustice, some atrocity happens, so say somebody is attacked, somebody is violated, somebody is killed. So at that time, how do we see it? Generally speaking, in our normal interactions with each other, we are not meant to jump to people's past life. Our focus always should be not on what is whose karma. Our focus should be on what is my dharma. What am I meant to do? When we are interacting with others, the suffering that they are going through, the problem that they are facing, it may have some remote cause. But in this situation, what can I do? So like same problem can be placed in multiple contexts. So among the multiple contexts, so in this particular situation, now if there is a breakdown of law and order, if there is indifference or corruption in the police, if there is a culture of crime not being punished, then that is to be seen as the cause of it. And that is what needs to be addressed. So traditionally, there is Shastra and Shastra. There are two means for dealing with problems. Shastra refers to weapons. These are used by Kshatriyas. Shastra refers to wisdom, scripture. These are used by Brahmins. So, with wisdom, we can make sense of our situation. But with weapons, sometimes situations have to be fixed. So you see, in the Kurukshetra war, Krishna gave the Bhagavad Gita, that was Shastra. But after Shastra came Shastra. Isn't it? It is not that there is only Shastra, but after that nothing is there. So both are required. We need wisdom, but wisdom is not a substitute for practical action. Wisdom is certainly not an excuse for not doing practical action. So if there is a social system that is not working, then that is what needs to be addressed. If somebody is going through some suffering, it is completely heartless to say that it is their past. Not only is it heartless, we are not omniscient. How do we really know what caused something? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, Gahana karma. Krishna is saying that the way karma works is very complex. In the Bhagavatam, it is said that when Parikshit asked the cow and the bull who are being persecuted by Kali, what is the cause of your suffering? And the bull, who is actually Dharma personified, he says, Vakya Bheda Vimohi. Vakya Bheda Vimohi. That means that there are different people, there are different philosophies, and actually I'm confused by all these philosophies. So I don't know what is the cause of suffering. So when suffering comes in our life, or suffering comes in someone else's life, it's not easy to determine. It's your own karma. Can we really be sure about that? We say it's God's arrangement is perfect. Nothing happens without God's arrangement. Okay. But how do we know that this person is suffering because of some karma from the past? It may be, it may not be. We say, what else could be there? Okay. Do we really know everything about it? See, karma, the last point I want to make here is that the purpose of karma has to be carefully understood. There is always philosophy and there is the purpose of philosophy. Krishna says, Jnanam Jnayam Jnanagamyam. So the purpose of karma philosophy as explained in Shastra. Now karma, we can look at it for our past, or we can look at it from the perspective of the future. Past means that if I am getting some situation, this is a punishment for that situation. That is one way of looking at it. The system of justice and punishment. But the other is encouragement. Not punishment, but encouragement. Now how does encouragement come about? Encouragement means we understand that actually I may be doing something right now, but I'm not getting the result of it. Why is that? Because of some past karma, I may be going through some negative phase right now. But that negative phase will end, and after that, the results will come. So essentially, what it means is our actions matter. Even if they don't seem to. Even if our actions sometimes don't seem to matter, but they do matter. Sometimes, for a change to happen, a lot of effort may be required. Like we have the story of how the Ganga came to the earth. There were generations of kings who performed tapasya, and many of them lived and died. And was all their effort in vain? People say it was in vain, but it was not in vain. It was a part of a team effort which went over generations. And then finally, then Bhagirath was the king who was able to get the Ganga on the earth. If you go to South India, there are still some ancient temples, or at least medieval temples, not ancient, they are still existing. And if you look at them, there are many generations of kings who built the temples. The king who started building the temple never got to see its completion. Does that mean the king's effort was in vain? No. So the idea is that when we go through life, we may be going through situations where unfair things are happening to us. So we focus on what is it that we can do. And sometimes the results may come, sometimes the results may not come. And if the results are not coming, karma uses one more explanatory framework to understand it. But that does not mean that that is the only thing. In Shastra, I haven't seen anywhere when someone is suffering and somebody else piles on top of them and says, this is all because of your karma. No, that person may themselves say, I don't know what karma I must have done in the past because of which I am suffering like this. So they may say that. But if the person is suffering, others don't tell them it's because of your own karma. Others try to help them at it. And while helping, if the philosophy of past karma can help a person get a sense of consolation, get a sense of relief, then that can be used. But if that is not going to help, there is no need to bring in past karma. If you see in the entire Bhagavad Gita, it does talk about karma. But the whole focus of karma in the Gita is forward looking. How is forward looking? Krishna is using karma in the sense that, okay, what is it that you should do? Karmanyeva adhikarasti. You have a right to do your duty. Krishna doesn't go into that backward focus. You had done this and he had done that, and Bhishma had done that and they had done that, and that's why now you're fighting. The Shastra does not give us example of backward focus. There are some cases, sometimes you may hear some story in the Purana, this person had done this in that life and that person had done that life, and that's why the two are meeting. But those are very rare. So, when we see karma from this perspective, what will happen for us is that we will be able to have more resources to be able to understand what is happening in our life, to make sense of what is happening, and then we can take action appropriately. So, for us, our sense of agency, that my actions can make a difference, that sense of agency is vital. Without that, we will lose hope completely. So ultimately, there is Krishna's plan But Krishna's plan, you may have seen this Gita Sar, sometimes it is there, जो हुआ वो अच्छा हुआ, जो हो रहा है वो अच्छा हो रहा है, जो होने वाला है वो भी अच्छा ही होगा. Whatever happened was good, whatever is happening is good, whatever will happen will be good. No, I haven't seen any verse in the Gita which says anything like this. I talk with many other devotees. I've read the Gita over 100 times. There are friends who have recited the Gita thousands of times. I haven't found any verse like that. The whole focus of the Gita is not, it's a nice thought. It is not a Gita's teaching. Now, whether it is philosophically accurate also, we have to question that. But the Gita's focus is not about what is happening. Gita's focus is on what we are going to do. Arjuna is not asking Krishna, oh, why do I have to fight this war? His question is, now that this war is here, what am I to do? Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta. So one way, everything that happens is for good. Is good. That is one conception. Now, this is not necessarily true. Bad things happen in the world. And if we start thinking everything that happens is good, then is there no injustice? Is there no atrocity? And Krishna says he comes to destroy adharma. If everything that happens is good, then what is the point of saying anything adharma? Actually, understanding is everything that happens, it's not intrinsically good, but it is for good. And for is very important. What does for mean? That Krishna has a higher plan, and through whatever is happening, Krishna can bring good out of whatever is happening. But that, for good to happen, we also have to play our part. So Krishna's plan, when we say, I consider here, if Krishna is ultimate reality, above destiny also. Now Krishna's plan, we can say, it's happening to me. But Krishna's plan is also going to happen through me. Okay. Zoom went up. Everything that happens is good, eh? Okay. Is my data gone? Or? Okay. So, when, if you see, when Draupadi surrenders to Krishna, that surrender is, he raises her arms in helpless dependence on Krishna. However, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna to surrender. Sharanam, mamekam sharanam. And Arjuna says, yes, I will surrender. Karishye vachanam tava. But how does Arjuna surrender? Does Arjuna raise his arms? No. Arjuna doesn't raise his arms. Arjuna raises his arms. Arjuna raises his bow in readiness to fight. So in Draupadi's situation, there was practically nothing that she could do in that situation. So, when there was nothing in her control, the surrender was, Krishna, I accept your will. But Arjuna was a warrior, he was in the battlefield. And there, his focus was on Krishna, I will accept the responsibility to do your will. It is not just what is happening is your will, but what you want to happen. That is also Krishna's will. And I will play my part in that. So, what happens to us, that is one part of it. But what is meant to happen through us, what am I meant to do? That is what ultimately is more important. And how we are helped in that is by having that attitude of service. By having. Where is it coming from? Share screen. Okay, but the echo is gone now. Yes. So Krishna's will is meant to happen to me, but Krishna's will is also meant to happen through me. What I am going to do is also important. So for us, whether it is karma philosophy or ultimately Krishna is the cause of all causes, it is for us to see how can I be of service. So karma philosophy, we need to see, is this going to help me serve? Is this helping me to do Krishna's will? Ultimately Krishna's will is what? He wants us to act in a positive way, in a constructive way. He wants to act in us to act in a way, in a mood of service attitude, by which whatever situation we are in, we act to make the situation better. So when we have this perspective, then we'll see that the karma philosophy can become empowering and not disempowering. It can help us. So when Lord Ram, Sita was abducted, what he saw was, it is now what has happened, okay, whatever reason it has happened, but now that it has happened, it is my responsibility to fix it. And he took up that responsibility. So in today's world, if we see some wrongs happening, to whatever extent we have the capacity, we need to work to fix it. And if we don't have the capacity, then we work and we wait so that at a broader level, the situation gets fixed. And when somebody is suffering, absolutely that person is not to be blamed. That person is not to be held responsible. We don't know what is the cause of suffering in the remote or the ultimate terms. What we know is, in this context, it is unfair. And that unfairness should be fixed in whatever way we can. So overall, to summarize what we discussed today, it was a broad class, but I try to summarize it in broad and overall frameworks. I started by talking about, the overall topic was, how does the karma philosophy, or broadly philosophy, help us to choose wisely, help us to act wisely. That was the broad topic that we discussed. Now within that, I started by talking about Ram acting in opposite ways. One was accepting the situation and then fixing the situation. Well, accepting when he was exiled, fixing when Sita was abducted. So why the difference? That was because it is all that he was duty centered, not destiny centered. The focus for deciding was, what is my duty? It is not what is destiny. So then, what is the purpose of understanding the idea of destiny? So we discussed the word destiny can mean many different things. It can mean past karma bank for us. It can mean potential, and it can mean refer to inevitability. So what is inevitable? Jo hone hi wala hai. So this was the broad context. And then the key part of the discussion was the middle one, that intelligence versus mind. What is it? For any problem that happens in our life, it could be placed in multiple frameworks, multiple causal contexts. The intelligence finds which is helpful. The mind often finds that which is not helpful, but even harmful. So if somebody drops a glass of water, just look at the immediate cause. Maybe my hand was wet, maybe the floor was slippery, maybe I didn't pay attention. From there to think, I cannot carry myself throughout my life. That's an unwise inference to jump to. So like that, when we learn philosophy, philosophy should not just give the mind more ways to jump to unhealthy conclusions. You jump to unhelpful frames. It is intelligence means to put things in their proper perspective. And if you want to know what is the proper perspective, as Mr. Prabhupada says, proper perspective means basically that perspective which helps us to act constructively. So which framework can I put things in by which I can act constructively? And if we consider that, then I discuss various examples of Maharaj Prutu or the tradition of charity and other things. So karma is not meant to make us artists. our focus is not on others' past karma. When something has happened, the focus is on our present dharma. We could put any problem in many different perspectives, but the perspective we put it in is our present dharma. And when we look at our present dharma, what does it mean? That means ultimately it is, how can I serve Krishna? There are ultimately parts of Krishna. How can I serve Krishna? How can I serve Krishna means? It essentially means Krishna wants things to be better. Krishna is the relationship of everyone. So how can I help make things better? How can I help make things better? So if talking about karma, considering past karma, can help us to make things better, then we can consider it. But if we find that that particular perspective is not helpful in the particular situation, then we don't have to focus on that. Ultimately for us, when we are functioning, Krishna's will both happens to us and through us. So Krishna's will happens to us. This was the mood in which Draupadi accepted what happened. But Krishna's will is meant to happen through us. This was the mood in which Arjuna surrendered. So our focus is on how can I act in the most constructive. And if karma philosophy is used to become an excuse for not doing the right thing, then that is a misapplication of the philosophy. The application of the philosophy is, how can I act constructively. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any quick questions or comments?
So I have two questions. One, like you rightly said about the marketing strategies of conversions. Of late, a lot of that we are seeing it happening in India. So now how is that Krishna's, what Krishna wants? Because people are moving away from him if they are falling for that, marketing strategy.
Yes, so God does not directly control this world. Krishna comes intermittently as avatar. But you see, after speaking the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, you take responsibility. See, the purpose of the Vedic literature, in general, the purpose of Krishna is not just to tell us how powerful I am, how powerful God is. But rather, with that understanding, it is how resourceful we can be. You see, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara. Where there is Krishna and where there is Arjuna, there will be success, there will be victory, there will be wealth. So now we could say, actually, Krishna is Vishnu Narayan. He is the Lord of the Goddess of Fortune. So wherever there is Krishna, there will be victory. Wherever there is Krishna, there will be opulence. So why does Arjuna need to be mentioned over there? Isn't it? The conclusion could be, wherever there is Krishna, there is victory. Why is it saying wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna, there is victory? Because the point is, yes, philosophically it's true, wherever there is God, there will be glory. But in this world, the human will needs to be aligned with the divine will. To the extent that happens, then there will be glory, there will be success in this world. So, it is for us, those who are practicing dharma, those who are trying to learn dharma, those who are trying to share dharma, it is for us to take more responsibility. And we can't really say completely that those who are becoming Christians are going away from Krishna. Christianity is also a path to God. Now, it depends that what conception are they going away. If they are actually going towards Christianity because they feel more inspired by the example of Jesus and they feel drawn to God, then that's not a loss. They are also going towards Krishna. But many people, when they convert to Christianity, it is not for any spiritual purpose. It is more for a mundane purpose.
That is what I want to ask, because most of them, if we look into it, that is something that is starting with selfishness and how do I portray? I mean, how do I put it in words? Because they are making people. So there's word in Hindi called lalach. I don't recall out.
They tempt people, entice people.
They're tempting people out of money and
that's
XYZ. So how is something right when it is starting with something negative?
See, I'm not saying
Tempting them to
I'm not
something
saying
negative.
it is right. Two different things over here. I'm saying that in this world, many wrong things happen. So now people trying to convert people from one religion to another religion, that could be with right motives, that could be with wrong motives. And just because something wrong is happening doesn't mean that God is not in control. There are so many wrong things that happen in the world. There are crimes happening. Because the crimes are far worse than just a person converting from one religion to another. So that the order that is maintained to be in the world, that has to come from humans taking responsibility. So to the extent, those who are followers of Dharma, they start taking responsibility. And I would say the last 5-10 years, that is changing. So Prabhupada pioneered this among the various Hindu organizations. So Prabhupada had the maximum missionary spirit. It was not just that, there have been, in the broad Hindu tradition, there are many great saints and great spiritual teachers. They may themselves be very charismatic and they are attract a lot of people. But to create a generation of people with that missionary spirit, that has not happened as far as I have seen. So Srila Prabhupada did that. And now there are others may also do that. But the idea is that it is important that we take up the responsibility. And we may say, what capacity do we have? Well, we have some capacity. If we use that capacity, God will give us more capacity in the future. So just because something is wrong, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. If somebody wants to do wrong, they will do wrong. And those who understand what is right need to take efforts to do what is right. To the extent they take the efforts to do what is right, then the wrong will be fixed.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Around this duty versus destiny, right? Duty versus destiny. How do we distinguish? Because in any given situation, right, something could be destiny, it is meant to happen, and there are cases where it is duty, where we could change that particular situation.
Okay.
So
It's a bit complicated, but the Gita itself gives a framework for this. This will take some time to explain. This is based on 18.14 in the Bhagavad Gita. It says there are 5 factors for action. Adhishtanam tatha karta karanam cha prasakvita vidhasya cheshta daivam chaivatra panchama. So basically, if there is one mountain of action, there is another mountain of result. Now between these two mountains, there is a bridge of 5 planks. The planks are like wooden surfaces which are there. So what are these 5 planks? First is, there has to be the soul. The individual has to be present to do things. And the last is destiny. Right. But then in between he says there are 3 things. There are the senses, there are the instruments of action, then there is the place, and then there is the endeavor. So these 3 factors, let's take an example to illustrate this. Let's suppose somebody is doing gardening. Now if they want to have garden in their backyard. Then what all is needed? First of all, they have to have the right seeds. If you don't have seeds, it's not going to work. Then secondly, so in this case, in gardening, the seeds are like the senses of. Then the basic ability has to be there. Then after that, the soil has to be fertile. And then one has to gain some level of expertise. Sometimes you just put too much water, sometimes you put too little water, sometimes you will not protect from some pests and other things. So we have to learn. So anything we do, we have to see whether we have the requisite ability for doing it. Say somebody wants to develop a career in say sports. Then first of all, do they have if somebody wants to become a cricketer, do I have the talent for that? So that first ability has to be. But after the ability is there, you have to be in the right place. If somebody wants to become a cricketer in a country like, say, in some country, Somalia, which doesn't play cricket, and if the place is wrong, things are not going to work. Somebody might be a great art student, but if they are in a college where engineering is being taught, then their art will be a distraction. So we need to have the talent and we need to put ourselves in the right place. And then even when there is talent in the right place, after that there has to be endeavor. And when the endeavor is there, then the success comes. See, Arjuna had natural talent for archery. But then he had to put himself in the place of Drona's Guru. And not only Drona's Guru, he had to endeavor. He had great talent, but he was practicing late into the night. So one of the reasons why he gave the name, he got the name Gudalkesh. So basically, when we look at these three things, when some success is not coming, we can look at whether the work I'm doing is incompatible work. That means the talents I have and the work I'm doing, is it incompatible? Or is it the place is unhospitable? Am I in the wrong place? Or is it that my endeavor is insufficient? Now, if after doing all these three things, we try to see what talents we have, we try to put ourselves in the place where the talents will be appreciated, and we put in our endeavor. If after doing all these three things, the results don't come, then we can say it is destiny. So Arjuna trained himself to be a great warrior. But even after that, he had to go to exile. That exile, he accepted as destiny. So it is, we have to play our part.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much.
Just to give a humorous example to illustrate this point. I was in England, I was visiting one devotee's house, and this devotee told me that, he was quite a sincere devotee. He said that, actually, I think, Krishna has, my wife is not at all cooperating with me in bhakti. So he said, I think Krishna has given me a very disagreeable wife so that I can become detached. So I said, wait a minute. Oh, you don't have to jump to such a conclusion. You have to look at other factors. Then we're talking about other things. And then he said, actually tomorrow is my wife's wedding anniversary. What do you mean your wife's wedding anniversary? So he said, I don't believe in all these things, it's a sentiment. I said, there itself is your problem. So, there are basic emotional, relational expectations. If you are not playing your part, if you are not doing the endeavor to meet those expectations, and then the other person is not being very pleasant, you can't blame it on destiny. Sometimes we may do everything right. Nobody can say I can do everything right, but we can do whatever is in our capacity right. And still the other person may be disagree. It is different. But if we are not doing our part, and then we are saying, oh, this person like this, is destiny. That's not destiny, that's stupidity. So we have to play our part. We can't jump to destiny as an explanation without playing our part.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhuji. I think this is very, very empowering, especially when you told the focus has to be on not what is whose dharma, but what is our dharma in every situation. So I think that's very empowering. Just wanted to share that, and maybe just trying to relate a problem. Like I come from Delhi, for example. So Delhi, I think there's a lot of smog and all, these days, pollution and all those, issues. Just thinking, maybe I think like in corporate we are taught, so I think how do we avoid or maybe lessen, minimize these kind of problems? Okay, instead of using your own vehicle, try to pooling options, try the options like, don't go by public transport and all that.
Yeah.
Here also, I think, it may be relevant. So, but I think the problem, whatever I think measures are being taken, the problem still stays, and it is increasing day by day. So maybe, these kind of situations, how do we relate and, what is our dharma? Even sitting remote also here, what is our dharma in those, or maybe the people who are suffering there, they have lung issues or whatever. I think our families are still there. So what should we advise them? We can't say, okay, it is your destiny and keep suffering in these kind of situations. So what is our dharma? I mean, their dharma who are staying there directly, and maybe our dharma who are seeing it remotely. Situations could be, I think like Srila Prabhupada said, United Nations kind of things, set up can't bring peace. I think it has to be dealt in a different way. Likewise, maybe in this kind of situation, what should be our advice to our family members, and what can we directly do in these kind of problematic situations?
Yeah, it's a serious question. See, the Bhagavad Gita, the word dharma is used in two different senses. At an individual level, Arjuna is asking what is the right thing to do. At a social level, Krishna says in 4.7 and 8, Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come to establish dharma in society. So basically, we may play our part, but society also has to be rearranged. And without that rearrangement, our part may not have much of an impact. And when society has to be rearranged, or society has to be arranged appropriately, then that also requires intelligence, that requires a sense of responsibility. And that's why good leaders are also important. And good leaders does not only mean a spiritually advanced leader. Spiritual advancement is good, but good leadership in the material world also means material competence. A particular field we are working in, if somebody is a surgeon, if that surgeon is a devotee, that is good. But if that surgeon is going to cut somebody's heart, they have to be good at that. You say, he is a devotee, but if they are a good surgeon, that's not going to work. Unless you want to go back to body at that time. Somebody will say, I don't want to so early. So the point I'm making is that there are, if you see, problems which, the ozone depletion was a big problem 20-35 years ago. That problem is not there. Some other problems have come up. You can always say that in the material world, one problem will go, another problem will come. That is true, but that doesn't mean we don't try to deal with problems. We try to deal with them as well as we can. So some measures work, some measures don't work. So we could say that good leaders do make a significant difference. If leaders are exploitative or just neglectful, then the country just life can become hellish over. If the leaders they might be brilliant, but if they are just basic sense of responsibility is there, they could make some conditions decent. That's why now in this particular situation, it's possible that some problems may just not be solvable. Maybe the measures that we are taking are not the right measures, maybe they're not sufficient enough. But then like that we can see sometimes even in our own lives, there are problems which may not be solvable. We try to fix a relationship, it doesn't get fixed. The person just remains antagonistic to us. So there are some problems we can't fix, there are some problems we can fix. So you could say in the last 10-15 years, the digitalization of the economy in India has happened remarkably fast. And to a significant extent that has cut down corruption. Not entirely by any means, but to a significant extent. So some measures work. And in real life, it's an experiment. We have to try out. When the Pandavas were fighting against the Kauravas, they tried out different strategies on different days. Each day they had a different strategy. Some days they were more successful, some days they were less successful. So, is it that particular approaches won't work at all? I wouldn't put it that blatantly. But the point is that those who are working on those approaches, there is two different things. There is a higher consciousness. Higher consciousness will actually make the person somewhat selfless. The other person wants to solve the problem. That is required. But along with that, there also has to be higher competence. The competence will actually, at a practical level, deal with the problem. Otherwise, what happens is somebody may have the competence to deal with the problem, but if they don't have the higher consciousness, they may use the solution of the problem as a means to just become wealthy or to mine money or whatever. See, the vaccines can be used to eliminate some diseases. But especially the COVID time, vaccines became just like a means to mint money. And some companies also, they said we want immunity from any kind of legal cases against us. So they just minted a lot of money and then, okay, now, I'm not making a case against vaccines over here, I'm just giving an example here. The point is that if there is competence but not consciousness, even those who do good, those who can do good, they will do it in exploitative. But if there is higher consciousness, there is no competence. They may want to do good, but they may not know how to do good. So we need leaders with a higher consciousness, and we need also leaders with a higher competence. Arjuna was Ma Manusmara Vidyacha. Arjuna had that higher consciousness. Arjuna was also a great warrior. So a combination of leaders can actually help us to fix things at a macro level. But at our level, at our micro level, we can try to fix as much as we can.
Krishna Prabhu, I think wonderful lecture, concept very well explained. I think one point I wanted to touch upon the intelligence and the mind, something which I found very actually clear. I think some of the workshop which I attended earlier, right, often we have been taught how brain works. So often we are reminded of mind your brain, and I think to various situations I have to, at least personally, come to this. Most of the problems is because of the mind, right? Now, why obviously your points talks about, right, the mind is driven by emotions. So ego and fear, the two factors which highly impact. And we start thinking, various ways. Maybe later on we reflect, we may find that the pattern of thinking was completely, illogical. But at that point in time, it is very extremely difficult to figure it out that you are actually on the wrong track. Right? So then my question is basically what probably 2-3 ways, in those kind of situations, person can take a pause, to figure it out that you are actually, or your mind is actually on the wrong track. Right?
Yes,
So what can we
it's a
do?
good question. Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita, and he basically talks about abhyasa and vairagya. So we can put it in English as boundaries and bonds. So boundaries is a sense of vairagya. Bonds is a sense that comes from abhyasa. What that means is that if we are living a life where, based on discipline, based on culture, based on conscience, we have created a sense of boundaries. Then what will happen is there are certain limits that we won't cross. Say for example, I just don't feel like going for a job. So nowadays, especially some younger kids, not everyone is mentioned, especially if they have grown up in a prosperous family, and especially not just 3, 4, 5 generations, they are prosperous. Just so nonchalantly, I don't like my job, just leave the job. You cannot leave a job like this. That's a plan. But if you don't like the job, you do it right now. You have some contingency plan, and when you explore something else, then you do this. Sometimes people just, if somebody has a basic sense of responsibility, I have to take care of myself financially, I have to take care of my family. So even if I don't like my job, still you continue. So the mind's emotions, I don't like this job. Because of that, I just quit it. So we have to have some sense of boundaries. And the boundary is that this is something which I will not do. And so we all may get angry. But in the basic cultural behavior, we may yell at others, but we won't use swear words or whatever. So there are certain boundaries which we need to have in our lives. That's why what will happen is the mind may take us in certain directions, but it won't take us too far away if there are boundaries. The second thing is, we need to create some bonds. Now what happens to the bonds is, bonds means if we have some people who are close to us, then in one sense this is related to boundaries, but slightly different. Then what happens, most people, if I am here, I am the soul, this is my mind, and then this is another person. So for most people, I look at them through my mind. Now, if I feel, this whole country, this whole place is a terrible place. I just have to leave this place. There's no way I can be happy. And anybody tries to convince me, you think, this person must have some agenda. By keeping me here, they are getting some benefit. That's why they will be here. But if we have bond with someone who is trustworthy, And what will happen is, we will look at our mind through them. For most people, we look at them through our mind. But even if you have one or two people through whom we look at our mind, then okay, I'm thinking this place is a terrible place. This person is my well-wisher. This person gets me. Let me hear what this person is. So in general, loneliness is one of the biggest predictors of mental health problems. It's not necessarily the cause, but it is a predictor. What happens when the people are lonely? Their mind is always speaking something, and they're not very close to someone. So there's nobody giving them an alternative to the mind's narrative. And then they just get caught in it. That's why investing in relationships is very helpful. And ultimately, if we have a bond with Krishna through bhakti, Krishna will not directly speak to us, but that bond will also help us get a distance from our mind. Okay, I'm feeling like this. And I just want to get away from this feeling of pain or feeling of frustration. I want to do that. But then we connect with Krishna, we pray to Krishna, we sing some kirtans and we feel calmer, we feel better. Then we won't be so emotion driven in our actions. Now this does not mean again emotions themselves are bad. Emotions are also valuable. They become a problem and they become the sole basis for our decision. Emotions should be like they should inform our decisions, not form our decisions. Inform means that's one input I take in. But form means they only determine the decision. That is not it. Thank you very much for your thoughtful participation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Ramchandra Bhagwan ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hare.
So I have written a few books. I brought some of them over here. This is one book on the Ramayana. This is like living the Ramayana. Some life lessons. So something on the concept that I discussed today. Like that. Few incidents from the Ramayana are narrated and practical life lessons are drawn from that. And then this is a calendar with some 365 quotes inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. Each quote is inspired by one verse. If we prayed as much as we worried, we would worry a lot less. The quote inspired by one verse. So, though everything that happens related to today's discussion, though everything that happens may not be God's plan, God can make His plan work through everything that happens. So God is expert enough for that. So each of these is inspired by one verse from the Bhagavad Gita. So if any of you would like to have some daily reflection for contemplation, this is also available. And I'll be here for some time in case you want to have any further questions or you would like to have the book signed. Thank you.